Have you ever wondered if you've lived before or will live again? Are you curious about what happens to your soul after you die? Or maybe you've met someone you're sure you've known before. Or maybe you're just wondering if you have talents, skills, and experiences from a prior life that could help you now. Hi, I'm Brownell Landrum, author of the upcoming We Meet Again trilogy, and I'd like to welcome you to the Life is a Trip podcast. The following story, The Restless Heart, was written by Michael Danese. Besides being a writer of short stories, Michael is also a playwright, photographer, and video writer, producer, director. This story is read by Beth Beyer.
The Restless Heart. The sweet smell of creamed corn and roast chicken filled the air in the humble home as the child giggled. Mommy carried the plate to the table. As Daddy put a napkin on his lap, he smiled at his wife as he anticipated their dinner. A young woman suddenly woke up with a gasp, which woke up the man next to her. "Lisa, are you okay?" asked Tom sleepily. "Yes, Tom, I'm fine. I'm sorry that I woke you," she said. "You had another one of those dreams, didn't you?" he asked. "Yes, I'm afraid they're getting more real," she said. "Anything new?" Tom asked. "Well, Mommy and Daddy are black, and they live in what seems to be a very small farmhouse in the woods," answered Lisa. "It's weird because I've never even been out of the city in my life." "Okay," said Tom. "Now get some sleep." Later that day, Lisa called on 6-year-old Gianna. Cat, C-A-T. Dog, D-O-G. "Very good, Gianna," said Lisa as she noticed Nicholas raising his hand. "Yes, Nicholas," said Lisa. "If hail is like ice, how could it fall when it isn't winter?" This isn't unusual for Nicholas, who often asked off-the-wall questions. Last week, during the science lesson, he asked how to spell the word chalk. Lisa actually enjoys the inquisitiveness of the children and will take the opportunity to discuss what interests them for a little while when she can. She did her best to answer the question, which prompted a brief discussion. Nicholas's mind darted again, and he asked about reincarnation. Lisa took a deep breath to collect her thoughts. Then she proceeded to tell them what reincarnation meant in a way they could relate to. Soon they went around the room talking about who they thought they were in a previous life. A princess, an Indian chief, a Roman soldier, cowboy, astronaut, Cleopatra. Too quickly the bell rang and the kids had to leave. It's obvious that Lisa cares about them very much. After the children left the classroom, Lisa took her brush from her purse and briefly ran it through her shoulder-length auburn hair. She took out a compact and rose-colored lipstick and applied it, as she has smooth, freckled skin and high cheekbones. She is in her 30s, but looks younger. She stood up and slipped into the blue jacket of her suit and headed for home. Mommy and Daddy were decorating a Christmas tree. They tried to include the little girl by lifting her up so she could put some tinsel on the tree. They were at a small Southern Baptist church. Everyone was black. Their voices were all raised in joyful, emotional singing. As they were exiting the church, the pastor said to the little girl, "I bet you're the most beautiful girl in Sky Falls." Lisa and Tom were getting ready to have dinner in their modest but homey apartment. Lisa put the dishes on the antique table that used to belong to Lisa's grandmother. She was still wearing her blue suit. Tom had changed into the white t-shirt and running shorts. Even though Lisa was 5'10", Tom still towered over her. His shaggy blonde, blue eyes and muscular physique were what initially attracted her to him. But his caring heart was his best feature. Lisa said, "I hate to bring it up, but these dreams are really getting to me." "I could tell," said Tom. "When I was a kid, I had similar dreams, but they've quickly faded in my mind as dreams do. But now they seem to be staying with me, and I can remember everything about them, not like the usual dreams," she said. "Perhaps you should speak to someone, a therapist maybe," said Tom. "I don't know. Let's give it some time," said Lisa. The young family was having breakfast. The smell of muffins was heavenly. Mommy handed a muffin dripping with honey to the little girl. They were walking together through a field of flowers. The sweet smell was intoxicating. Daddy picked up the little girl. Mommy and Daddy were watching a small black and white TV. The picture was terrible. It was the evening news, and Walter Cronkite announced that Ronald Reagan had officially been elected to a second term. Daddy seemed to be saddened by this news and said to Mommy, "This whole country is going to hell in a bucket." Mommy said, "Honey, please watch your mouth in front of the child." Lisa was getting obsessed with her dreams now. She began to write down everything she remembered about them. A young black couple with one child, small farmhouse in the south, church filled with singing, sky falls, Ronald Reagan. The little girl was in a dark place, perhaps a closet. There were raised voices, but she couldn't make out anything. There was another voice besides Mommy and Daddy. Lisa was in her room on her computer. She Googled Sky Falls. She got a few hits, but one caught her eye. Sky Falls, Tennessee, population 1,425. Later at dinner, she was excited to tell Tom what she had discovered. Tom was beginning to get annoyed with her obsession. She told him she found some cheap flights to Knoxville, and since school is ending next week, she wanted to go and explore the town. Tom told her he couldn't possibly get away, and again he suggested that perhaps she should try to get some counseling. "I'm sure the school has a plan that would help find someone. Thanks, but I'm sure that I don't need counseling. This is just something that I have to do," she said. The little girl was still in the closet. She heard Mommy scream. She heard the dog barking outside. Lisa arrived in Knoxville, and she was driving a rental car. The signpost ahead said, "Sky Falls, 10 miles." She checked into a quaint hotel. It was a charming town, but she had an uneasy feeling. She walked down Main Street and passed several storefronts. She paused at the drugstore, and her mind flashed to what the store would have looked like 30 years ago. Same for the hardware store, the movie theater, and the post office. From the closet, the little girl was struggling to peer through the crack of the door. A splinter of light spilled onto her face. Mommy screamed again. The dog was barking. She could now see the other person, a young white man. He punched Daddy in the face. The dog continued to bark. She saw a knife in the man's hand. Lisa woke up sweating and her heart was racing. She reached for her cell phone to call Tom. The call went directly to voicemail. She had breakfast at a diner near the hotel. She felt like she was taking a step back in time. The old soda fountain, naugahyde booths, lacy red curtains, linoleum-tiled floor, and spotless tables. She slid into a booth. The sweet southern hospitality of Clara, the waitress, with a trusty pot of coffee gave her some comfort. Clara was a small, round woman with gray hair that probably was blonde at some point. She was wearing a white blouse, black pants, and a white apron. She had a yellow bow in her hair. "You ain't from these parts, are you, honey?" remarked Clara with a big smile. "No, but it sure is a homey town," answered Lisa. "Tea wasn't always," answered Clara in a whisper. She filled her cup and went to the next customer and filled his. He was a huge man with a large gray build and bushy hair. He was wearing overalls and a red hat with a Confederate flag on the front. She was in his Old Spice cloud, which she assumed he used to replace a bath. She felt his eyes on her and again felt uneasy. He didn't say a word or even look at Clara as she poured his coffee. Lisa went to the police station and met the sheriff, Rusty Sullivan. He was a large man in his mid-60s with a head full of graying red hair. She thought that as a younger man he may have been an athlete. She wondered to herself if all the men in this town were large. She told him her story, and he listened politely. "That's an interesting yarn, young lady, but I ain't sure what I can do about it. If you should be able to get any more information or specifics, please let me know," responded the sheriff. "Thank you for your time and for being so kind," said Lisa. "I will let you know if I learn of anything more." She spent the rest of the day wandering around the town, not able to shake the haunting feeling. As she peeked out of the closet, she saw the knife penetrate Daddy. He fell to the ground as Mommy screamed again and the dog continued to bark. The shadowy figure seemed surreal to the shocked little girl. The man came towards Mommy. She threw a lamp at him, and he brushed it aside with a swoop of his arm. The knife entered her in the belly, and she quickly fell next to Daddy. The barking of the dog seemed to irritate the killer. He headed for the door. Lisa woke up with her heart pounding. She called Tom again. Voicemail. She showered and headed for the diner. The cheerful waitress, Clara, tried her best to lift Lisa's mood, but she just kept mulling the details over in her head. She asked Clara where she could find the library. She made the short walk to the library. It was a large, stately building in the center of town. There was a young, thin woman in a plain pink dress behind the counter. Good morning, said Lisa, almost startling her. The librarian quickly looked up, pushed her reading glasses up her nose, adjusted her mousy brown hair that was pulled up in a bun, and said, Good morning, how can I help you? Hi, I didn't mean to startle you, Lisa said as she smiled. I'm doing some research. Could you show me where I can find the back issues of the local paper? Ah, yes, those would be on microfiche. There's a reader on the second floor. I reckon it still works. It's been a while since it's been turned on, she said, returning the smile. With the help of the librarian, they were able to get it working. The films are in this cabinet. Is there anything that I can help you find? No, thank you for being so kind. I can manage from here, said Lisa. A short time later, she found the article proclaiming Reagan's re-election. She then scoured the papers for the next several days. Finally, she found what she suspected. A family was murdered outside of town. A family, a young couple and their little girl. The Martin family. It was days before the bodies were found. The article mentioned possible ties to several other murders in the area over the past few years. The common thread seemed to be Negroes living in the country, nighttime stabbings, and probably one person. That was it. She printed the article. She spent the day looking through the files for the papers for the next several days, then weeks, then months. There was nothing more. She thought out loud to herself something about the unimportance of a murdered black family in the South. The more things change, the more they stayed the same. She went back to the diner, and the waitress, Clara, was sitting in a booth having a cup of coffee and a piece of pie after a long day's work. Hi there, honey. Come and sit for a spell with me. Lisa was glad to feel welcomed. She told Clara the story, or at least the brief version of it. She showed her the article and asked if she knew where the house might be. I remember something about the incident, but not much. Hey, maybe mosey down to the filling station on the corner. If anyone knows, it would be Buck. Oh, Clara, thank you ever so, said Lisa. Lisa briskly walked to the gas station. It was a tattered brown building that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s. Two of the front windows were covered in newspaper. Behind the desk was a large Confederate flag and a sign that read, In God we trust, everyone else pays cash. Hello? Hello? Is anyone here? Lisa announced. A muffled voice came from the garage in the back. Hi, I'm looking for Buck, she said as she entered the room. She saw the multi-stained, overall-covered legs poking out from under a car. Then part of a wrinkled, greasy face peered out. Do you have a car that needs fixin'? Asked Buck. No, I just have a few questions, she said. Then come back later, I'm busy, said Buck. He must have been very busy because usually a pretty girl would get his undivided attention. Please, it will just take a second, said Lisa, turning on the sweetness. He looked her up and down from under the car, then slid himself out a few more inches. Make it quick, then, he said. Clara at the diner told me you might know where the old Martin place is, she asked. Never heard of it, said Buck as he slid back under the car. Actually, I'm doing research about the murders from the 80s, she said. That seemed to jar Buck's memory. He turned his smeared face from the underside of the car and looked at her. So you want to know where the Martin place used to be? No one's lived there since forever. Yes, then I would like to know where the Martin place used to be. Ain't hard to find, said Buck. He barked some simple directions, and soon she was on her way. A while later, she was on thin dirt road. The smell of the Spanish moss was strong. The canopy of the trees was thick and blocked out almost all of the light. She began to feel uneasy again and questioned why she even brought herself to this sinister place. She took out her phone to check in with Tom. No service. She finally found herself at the shell of the house that was once both a happy home and a torture chamber. She pushed in the front door that was flooded by what seemed like imprinted memories. Happy family meals. Mommy singing to the gospel radio station. Warm candlelight. The aroma of fresh chocolate chip cookies. Daddy kissing Mommy. The dog licking Daddy's face. Yellow birthday cake. Her eyes darted to the closet. Suddenly translate, the memories reverted to horror. The little girl snuck out of the closet and went to the window. She saw the man stab the dog in the throat. Suddenly there was silence, and she let out a slight shriek. The man quickly turned towards her window. She saw his face in the moonlight. He had light hair and piercing blue eyes. His left earlobe was missing, like it was bitten off. The glaring face was now burned into her brain. He threw the knife into a hole in a big hollow tree and turned towards the house. Her cell phone rang and she caught herself screaming. She calmed herself and answered, Tom. Oh, Tom, thank God it is you. I've been trying to reach you. I'm so sorry, honey. My phone was dead. I think you may have taken my charger with you. I bought a new one this morning, and I called as soon as I had enough power. Are you okay? You sound terrified. Yes, I'm fine, but the horrors that I've learned, you just won't believe it, she said, almost hysterically, as she quickly walked out of the house. She briefly explained what she found out as she walked away from the house and toward the dirt road that led her back to her car. That's incredible. What are you going to do next? He asked. I'm going back to the sheriff. Perhaps he could identify the man or show me mugshots or something. That sounds like a great idea. Please call me as soon as you talk to him, said Tom. I promise, she said. I feel so sorry for not getting back to you sooner. I love you, he said. I love you too. I'll call you soon. I know there's no signal on this road, so I'll going to lose you at any second. As she walked, she was a bit confused by how she even knew all of this, but at least now she felt a bit of satisfaction because she seemed to be getting to the bottom of it all. She climbed into the car and slid the key into the ignition. Suddenly, her throat was in what felt like a vice grip. She glanced to the rearview mirror and saw the haunting face. It was Buck, quite a few years older, but the same piercing blue eyes. She also caught a glimpse of his left ear. He roughly threw her out of the car and held her hands behind her. He then spun her around. Claire told me you've been poking around here. Why do you come from the big city up north and stick your nose into where it don't belong? Lisa was scared silent. She had no idea what to say. He obviously knew that she knew it was him, but how could he? He duct taped her arms behind her and put some tape over her mouth. He shoved her in the back of his panel van and drove away. Couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Now I need to know what you know and how you know it, 'cause I know just how to find out, he growled at her. They arrived at what looked like a junkyard. It was once a large farmhouse and barn. There were old, rusted cars, engines, and parts everywhere. He dragged her into the barn and locked it here in an animal pen. She fell in the corner, still taped. He left her there overnight. The next morning he came to the barn and entered the cage. I'm going to take the tape off, but if you scream, you're dead, okay? She nodded. She thought to herself that she was already dead. Could he kill her twice? Now you're going to tell me what you know and how you know it. Got it? He growled. I know it sounds crazy, but I dreamed some bits and pieces about the family, and I came here to try to put their story together, she said in a whisper. And now you figured you got it all together, right? He said. Lisa just hung her head and whimpered. As I thought, he said as he replaced the tape over her mouth. I gotta go into town and deliver a car. I'll deal with you directly. But when Buck arrived in town, the sheriff barged into the service station, grabbed him, and threw him against the wall. Where is she? Where is she, you murdering bastard? Demanded the sheriff. Where is who? Said Buck. The sheriff slammed him up against the wall again. Tell me right now or I'll rip your other ear off, the sheriff roared. Buck cowered and told him that she was in the barn. Sheriff and Rusty and Tom entered the barn and found Lisa unconscious, but basically unharmed. Rusty removed the tape from her mouth, her arms, and legs. She opened her eyes and began to scream. Tom hugged her and she began to cry. Rusty left them alone for a few minutes. Oh, Tom, thank God it's you. I was sure he was going to kill me, Lisa said through her tears. I'm so sorry you had to go through this, so sorry, as he hugged her again. They all met back at the police station. Lisa was wrapped in a blanket. Tom was still hugging her. Clara handed them both a cup of coffee. Even on her days off, she works. Lisa looked up and forced a thankful smile at her. Tom said, When you didn't call me, I started to call you. When you didn't answer, I got worried, so I called the sheriff and told him what you told me. As soon as I mentioned the ear and the eyes, he knew it was Buck. I went out to the old Martin place and found your car. I also found the knife in the bottom of that tree. I called Tom, and he got on the next plane. We were searching all over for Buck, but just plumb couldn't find him, said Sheriff Rusty. As soon as I saw his van pull into town, I grabbed him. I spent some time persuading him as he fessed up to that murder and 6 others. Buck is one of those guys that give the South a bad name. You know the type. He thinks he's still fighting the Civil War. He was a bit too radical for the KKK, so he thought he would wage his own race war. For some reason, it ended with the Martin family, and the unpleasantness faded away over time. Till now, thanks to you. What did you say the date of those murders was? The sheriff added. I'm not sure I ever mentioned a date, but oddly enough, they occurred on the day I was born, said Lisa. Aha! There you have it, said Clara. Reincarnation. The soul of little Lily Martin wasn't done yet. She needed to make things right, and she chose you to do it. Well, I don't know if I believe in that, said Lisa. Don't rightly matter if you believe it or not. That's just the way it is. You were born when she died, probably at the same second, said Clara. I don't know either, but I'm glad it worked out that way it did, said the sheriff. I guess you'll have quite a story for the kids when school begins, said Tom. Somehow I don't think 3rd graders will completely grasp the whole thing, Lisa said while chuckling. Let's get you back home, said Tom. Right after we eat at the diner. I'm starving. Come on, everyone. My treat, Lisa added. Buck was convicted, and Lisa's dreams never crossed with Lily Martin again. But the newspaper clippings, along with the ones about Buck, are safely tucked into her desk.
Thank you for listening to The Restless Heart by Michael Danese, read by the amazingly talented Beth Beyer. Michael resides in the Lehigh Valley in Pennsylvania. You can find dozens of additional stories by Michael Danese on Amazon, drafttodigital.com, smashwords.com, and several other outlets. He can be contacted at danesemc@tdt.net or connect on X, Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Beth Beyer is an exceptionally talented spiritual hypnotherapist who can be found at renolifebetweenlives.com. Hi, this is Brownell. For more of these transcendental tales, please join the Life is a Trip group on Facebook and check out my amusing and enlightening story entitled The End, which you can find on my website, brownelllandrum.com. That's BROWNELLLANDRUM.com. And please look for my upcoming novel trilogy entitled We Meet Again. It's a story about a famous couple reincarnated today to help solve a centuries-old mystery that will change the world.